Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's MediaWorks Masterclass. So this session really is the culmination, the end of year, final 2025 MediaWorks Masterclass. So I'm really excited to sort of be finishing the year talking all things paid social. I think it's been a really important year across paid social with loads and loads of changes. So we're going to focus on the learnings that we've taken as an agency sort of in the second half of this year, what we know is coming as we move forward into 2026. And really, we're going to share some tips and tricks around how we stay ahead as we move into 2026. For those that don't know, my name's David Norris. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at MediaWorks, and I'm the host of the MediaWorks Masterclass. Today, I've got with me James and Max. So, James, would you like to give a brief introduction?
Yeah, hi, I'm James. I'm paid media director, formerly head of paid social a couple of years ago. But yeah, lots of experience in the space, and it's going to be an exciting year.
Fantastic. Max?
Hi, I'm Max Milburn. I'm the paid social lead here at MediaWorks.
Fantastic. So, as I say, throughout today, we want to share some of the insights that we're obviously seeing. And then towards the end, we also have sort of a number of sort of MediaWorks specific recommendations, things that we've seen specific to the accounts that we manage across a multitude of clients, across a multitude of sectors. But I think a really good place to start is always sort of just the context piece for me, really. User behaviors are changing, like we know that they're changing. Again, apologies for AI bingo as we go through today. We will be saying AI a lot. We will be talking about the way that discovery is changing, the way that consumers are engaging with brands. But I guess for me, what does sort of user behavior changes mean for paid social, James?
Yeah, I think if we just look at the broader digital landscape, like there's been a lot of change this year. Like AI has fundamentally changed how people search. You can see some of the stats there. We've talked about this in previous sessions, but 20% of people have changed their primary search platform in the last year. That discovery journey is becoming more complex. There are new players in the space, and like on average, journeys are taking like 29 odd touch points. So there's a lot more happening, and we just have to be very conscious of that. And I don't think that's a behavioral shift that's one that's going to continue to evolve as the technology evolves. So expect more change next year.
Yeah, and then one of the big drivers has been the idea of social search. You know, we've been talking about this for a while. Lots of the platforms are now becoming more like search engines in their own right. The way that we search in platform, the way that we discover different products and follow different trends within them has totally changed.
Yeah, definitely. I think user behaviors has changed so much over the last few years. And a few years ago, we'd be thinking that like having a whole range of really valuable search intent coming through on social channels would be unthinkable. But now, especially younger demographics, we're seeing that come through on TikTok as a main one, short form video content for things like products and reviews, especially some really high intent searches coming through across that, as well as Instagram and Pinterest, people doing their research phase kind of around that visual element. I think that the biggest capitalizer of this so far has been TikTok, which is rolling out new ad platforms and new ad formats where we're going to have to start bringing elements of SEO and paid search into that kind of keyword bidding that's going to come into these new ad formats on TikTok.
Yeah, I think it's really about understanding the algorithms, isn't it? You know, in a way that we've known about sort of organic search and the way that we sort of engage and play into the platform's algorithm. I think there's a lot more of that taking place within the social search space with nuances in each area.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think then short form content is driving like the massive amount of growth that we are seeing. So we all, you know, our attention spans are shortening. We're all scrolling quicker and quicker, it seems. And that's becoming a real opportunity and challenge, isn't it, across social?
Yeah, I think short form content really is it's being fueled by those platforms, TikTok being the first one, but Instagram, YouTube Shorts, everything is geared around that bite-sized small bit of content that is very digestible, very like fast paced. And it is how people are consuming media, consuming news, consuming everything these days. So it's about making sure that we bring that into our ads and focus the content around that format that does work so well with the users. So it's making sure that we're grabbing attention early, using that sort of authenticity, which we'll touch on a little bit in terms of UGC, but like using that to sort of drive those trust factors, but making it bite-sized with a clear hook and very, very clear for the user to sort of absorb at pace.
And you used the word there, trust, James. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think trust's been so important, isn't it? And understanding those trust metrics across platforms has been absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I think trust has always been a thing for brands, and like since marketing's developed, that's always been one of the fundamental things that we've been trying to do is build that relationship. But like, so it is the, if not the most important, it's certainly one of the most important factors that we can do. 92% of consumers will do something if they trust the brand or the organization, and 74%, almost 75% of people will spend more if they trust it. Like, you'll know it from your own Christmas shopping probably. If you recognize a brand, you're more likely to spend with them and you don't mind spending a little bit more. So how we build that and how we communicate that and develop that trust is an extremely important aspect that will be present across all social ads in the next year. And we'll have to continue working out, how do we get more social proofs in there, using reviews, interacting with audiences, and sort of tailoring the content to make us trusted, and particularly given that the content's getting shorter, so you've got less and less time to interact with those users.
And I think that's become a challenge, hasn't it, when we think about sort of the way that a lot of advertisers historically have almost been, dare I say, TV, print media first. So it is a very polished, very sort of high-end look, feel, and people often think of that from a brand perspective. But we've seen a massive shift in terms of people wanting to see more of that user-generated content, that UGC, and also employee-generated content now. And I think that, for me, has been like a real shift that we've seen in terms of, and how brands manage that's really important, isn't it? Because it is one of those things I often think that definitely scares a lot of bigger organizations, and probably does allow smaller, more aggressive developing organizations do some more interesting things because they don't have the brand reputation and brand legacy piece to look after. But it's a real sort of dichotomy, isn't it, in there?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. But I think where UGC really wins out is, as Jim talked about before, the trust factors. And I'm going to bring up the word AI for the first time today.
Well done.
But, we in the world where you don't know what's real and what's not real, having someone go into a place or having someone review something is the kind of like relationship and trust building that you can't emulate through really nice visuals. And in the same way, if you go onto EGC, you have that resource in-house a lot of times. Thought leadership content across LinkedIn, or having any type of self-created content from people who know the business and know the customers the best can be incredibly valuable to not only like get content out the door and compete in a very fast-moving ecosystem, but also to like get your point across and use what you've learned working with these businesses and in your markets to really like direct some messaging towards pain points.
And I think the thing for me there is, I think there's so many things that you can be really creative on. I think I was viewing something the other day, and it was finding sort of creative ways to present some of sort of mundane things, that actually perform really well. I was seeing somebody do a walkthrough of a bit of a building, and I think it was all to do with the electrical wiring in a building, and it got like so much engagement. Now, on the surface of it, that's very different to an unboxing and what we've historically thought of as, for example, UGC or EGC. But I think it's the authenticity that really shines through.
There's definitely a massive point to be made to have an ad or a piece of content come across that doesn't come across as an ad.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people are very like media savvy. So if they do see like a strong conversion ad, a product or a strong call to action at the top of the image, sometimes it can make people disconnect. And having that UG and engaging content just gets that retention up high, it gets that engagement high, and allows for that initial like relationship building between brand and person. And
I guess we know that creative is is the most important factor when it comes to cut through performance of advertising, and especially in the social space. So sort of how do we balance that?
Yeah, I think everything Max has sort of said there in terms of UGC and EGC being really, really important for the short form content, for building that trust, authenticity, and for promoting expertise within or the brand and the business as experts in a space. But like, we have to remember that has to be, you have to blend that with more traditional forms. You can't just run UGC forever, because your brand is not always front of mind. It's easier if you're a bigger brand like Currys doing EGC, because everyone recognizes Currys. But if you're a smaller brand or in a space where it's very competitive, making sure that you've got that element of brand creative that you can drop in that sort of helps knit everything together, but make it a cohesive story. Like hybrid storytelling, I suppose, is what we are sort of expecting. I think there'll be UGC providing hooks, easy engagement, but you'll also have like proof points with brand clarity, like more traditional assets, building that in. I think the key will be A/B testing and working out exactly what it works for you, how it fits for your business. But I think we have to remember to showcase the brand and establish the brand, but use the sort of newer content formats as those trust builders.
But I think it's fair to say, isn't it? I think a lot of brands seem to be quite scared of testing, you know, and I think for me, like, if you're going to test, you know, like really test variants, you know, and really understand what resonates, what actually does drive performance. Because I think what we see is a lot of minuscule changes, you know, what I would call sort of incremental sort of testing, whereas actually sometimes might be worthwhile just trying some revolutionary sort of testing approaches where we're trying very different formats, or, you know, the polished version versus the user-generated content. Like, for me, I think that's the interesting thing. It's so dynamic that it's like, just give it a go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I'd say is, like, it looks daunting on the outside, but like, if you break it down into specific parts and make it modular, you can start to test and scale quite easily. You need a hook, like you need something that's going to grab attention within that sort of first couple of seconds. That could be anything. That could be anything from like a jump cut to sound to whatever. But you need that. You need to think about, like, okay, what is my attention grabber? Then how do I transfer into a body which says something about the brand, about the products, etc. It's your more traditional side of it. It could be just capitalizing on a trend, but you're saying something in that bit and then finishing up with an action. And if you break down even a UGC or EGC in that manner, like, it does become quite modular, and you can start to test multiple things and quickly create some sort of scale into it, particularly when we start talking about, like, how do we use AI? It is about this sort of developing some scale there.
Yeah, and for me, I think this really offers quite a neat little framework to consider, because I do think testing's great, but it's about understanding how you are testing. Do you know what I mean? So it's understanding which variables are we actually changing, therefore what are the results going to be? Because you see, a lot of people trial different things, but actually because they haven't got the testing framework in place or the structure in place, it becomes almost an incoherent test. So I think it's so important that people do have sort of that modular approach to scaling and testing accounts. We're going to do now a whole section on AI. So Max, you introduced it, but I think it's worthwhile saying we've got to think about how we can effectively harness the power of AI as we move forward. And I think AI and targeting automation, I would say it's been around in paid social for a long time. Like, this isn't us talking about the rise of ChatGPT in other areas. This is us talking about an evolution that's happened over a period of time that, yes, to give a Christmas reference, the snowball's getting bigger and bigger as we get to sort of further down the mountain. But, you know, this has been in play, hasn't it, in paid social for a while, Max?
Yes, it has, yeah. And we'll talk about a few different things that paid social does with AI. But one of the things that has a bit of a legacy with that is definitely at its most trusted level is the AI automation targeting.
Yeah.
A lot of it was based on originally, like, how when Google introduced a PMax campaign, this idea of looking at signals and kind of having a bit more hands off while the platform goes off and learns and tests. And it's rolled off first across Meta with the Advantage Plus campaigns, which, as you pointed out before, was originally called matchmaking.
Yeah.
Now it's AI.
Yeah.
But it's always learning, and because it's had that history of having that time to develop, across LinkedIn as well as TikTok Smart Plus ads, they're all kind of going in that direction where if you're not leveraging these kinds of targeting, you're definitely losing out.
I think then into the creative point, I think like this is an area we've been doing loads of work recently, isn't it? I think like, again, how do you utilize AI to create creative at scale?
And this is a really tricky situation for a lot of companies going into when to use AI and when not to use AI with their creative. So in this example, we're talking about the stuff that comes within in-platform, like Meta, for example, when there are Advantage Plus or AI automations applied to your creative. And it works the best when we're trying to get a large scale of creative, when we need to test variations. There's an example at the bottom of the slide where if you get one image, how do you just get more variance, so you're feeding more data back into the system, so you're getting more testing and more learning out of that without having to milk loads of resources into it.
Yeah.
But in the same way, there is full AI image creation kits within Meta, and they're probably not at the level yet where you want to just trust it completely, but there definitely is parts where you can jump in and learn it.
I'd also just add there, like, they are getting better. They're getting better quickly. So who's to say that in 2026, halfway through the year, it's not like you might have a single creative and you use your AI enhancements to create your variations that you're going to do some of the testing on, or as long as it fits within the brand, because you still can select some of the stuff, but there's ways that you can scale quite quickly and test things quite quickly that AI offers, but it does need that human element of control, because we've all seen the horror stories where we let something go where AI can generate something that's not accurate or brand safe.
Yeah, the thing I'd say about that, though, is I think that is getting lesser and lesser all the time. You know, I was thinking, I know some colleagues shared with us last week some work they'd be doing for a utilities company, and it was absolutely amazing to see, like, to take a static image that had been created by our design team, and we then changed it into video footage, you know, a very short format video, where we know that video performs very well on these platforms. So the ability to do that, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's quick to do, but it's definitely quicker to do than it has been, and it's definitely drives that impact. So I think for me, this is definitely one of the watch spaces going into 2026, where I do think that technology is at its worst today. You know, it's going to be better in a month, better in 3 months, definitely better in 6 months. So I think there's so much opportunity for organizations to be using AI to create creative at scale, and therefore give us more opportunity to test. I think the impact of AI in social on consumer perception, though, is something we do have to consider. So I know the whole conversation around authenticity versus automation, all I need to do is go onto LinkedIn these days, have a scroll, and you can see people are producing posts that are clearly AI generated. I seem to get an in-mail nearly every other day by AI generated, with AI generated follow-ups placed upon them. So it's really interesting, isn't it, to really strike that balance?
Yeah. And I think it's something that there's been, like, as AI becomes more and more common and more prevalent, there is going to be how consumer perception shifts is going to be important to watch. And I think next year we probably will see some sort of shifts in how that perception is. What the outcomes of that and where it lands, we couldn't speculate right now. But you've got, like, high profile examples like the Coca-Cola ad, Christmas ad from last Christmas, got a lot of, because it was fully AI generated, and they said that it only took them five staff members to create an ad that, like, previously took hundreds, which has lots of, clearly can make lots of people annoyed, or and does generate a bit of backlash. This year they did the same thing. You can still clearly tell the ad's AI. There's still a lot of backlash around it in pockets, but it is becoming more and more common. Like, is there going to be a movement towards AI fatigue, as you mentioned? Like, are people gonna stop engaging if they feel like it's recognizably AI and we have to move out of it? Are they going to start distrusting it? Or is there just is it going to be something that you're going to have to, because trust is such a big factor, it's quite hard to trust something if you're assuming every time, like, that brand, like, you don't even know that there's a person behind that brand. So I think there's going to be a sort of balancing, at least like we have to be conscious that there's potential for it to move in a direction where actually we don't want everything to be AI. We want lots of it, but we do need somewhere there to be a bit of a human connection.
Yeah, and it's probably going to become really interesting, isn't it, as sort of the proliferation of this type of technology comes more to the fore. Consumers are going to become more comfortable with it and more probably used to seeing it. So again, does that change where perception is around how it's being used, if it's okay to be used, etc.? Because it's going to get better, it's potentially also going to get harder to spot. So I think there's a real fine balance, isn't there, in there? And I think we've just put on screen here some ideas around how to balance the use of AI in 2026.
Yeah. I think it's balancing the approaches. Obviously, AI gives us tons of advantages on the creative and scaling front, but it's like augment your brand, your business planning, and your tactics with AI. Don't think of it as a full replacement for everything, because you always will need some of those controls in place. And pair it with human-led experiences to try and leverage some of that authentic feel. The UGC content works so well because it is so unpolished and so authentic, and basically use it as a scaling tool, to rather than necessarily an all-out replacement. And I think if you follow those three principles, you'll be able to scale without and sort of probably avoid any potential backlash that may or may not exist in the next year or two.
So I think that the final section that we wanted to spend sort of the final 8 to 10 minutes on was really sort of talking about future-proofing your paid social activity. As we go through this, I think like it's worthwhile saying that if anybody does want any tailored, bespoke advice, guidance on it, then by all means do click the link that's in the chat to arrange sort of a consultation with a member of the paid social team to talk about your specific context, your specific challenges, and we can walk you through sort of some recommendations that we see that would be suitable for your sector. That could be things like an audit, but it might just be more general conversation at this stage. So by all means do, feel free to sign up. I think you'll see on the next slides, we followed this format where we've got some key call outs, but also then we finish by giving sort of our recommendation as well around things that people should be focusing on. So the first thing we want to call out really is that platform diversification piece.
It relates really heavily to what we talked about at the beginning about there's been so much shift in behavior recently that a channel that might have in the past had so much market share now isn't getting as much, and there's loads of different ways to approach with your engage with a brand, and if you putting all your eggs in one basket and having just one or two platforms might end up isolating other parts of the audience. So when we do deal with our clients, we always try and advise 3 channels to be active at any given time, just to try and get a wide net and try and give us the best opportunity to reach the audiences that we want to reach.
Yeah, and for me, I also think it's about considering how paid social drives performance across other platforms. We've talked about, I know, Max, yesterday we were in London speaking to a client about the role of paid social in terms of driving brand awareness, driving interest, actually allowing people to discover a product offering, really, that we know is probably then going to lead to a search within a Google or a LLM of whatever annotation you want to really go through.
Definitely. It's one of the most effective outbound marketing tools that we have, and it's one of the most visually engaging ones as well. Opposed to other outbound marketing methods, social is people's mindsets when they're on social platforms are a little bit more open to exploring, open to trying out, seeing what an ad's about, rather than maybe just being hit with an ad that they have to get through to the other side and kind of just sit and be passive with. It gives that extra level of engagement. And because of that, it can be really good to sit on that research phase, on that early engagement phase. And once you get into that, as part of the marketing ecosystem, you'll probably be hit with, we have remarketing ads to help channel people who have high search intent, and as well as leading into direct and Google and feeding into other channels.
And then I guess the next one would be then sort of talking about simplified structures and strong signals. Like we've been talking about this. I know we've been talking to clients about this for at least the last 12 months in terms of how do we simplify structures to align to objectives, but also then allowing sort of the platforms to, well, allowing us to make use of the platforms that exist in the machine learning that's actually out there.
Yeah, I think this one is very much about, like, because the platforms are all pushing us in that direction of Advantage Plus, of Smart Plus, where everything is broad, but lots of signals to lead to really, really personalized experiences for the user. We need to make sure that we have that data hygiene piece sort of set up. We had a measurement masterclass a couple of weeks ago, but like making sure there's strong signals that we're supplying the right data, we're using APIs or feeds, like all our data hygiene is in a good place, that we're giving these platforms the tools that they need to make the most effective versions or to make most effective use of those campaign types. And within that, we also need to think about, like, if AI and some of that is going to take on some of that personalization approach, the more effective way that we could do it is make it broader, give it more data, and allow it to sort of spend and develop. So I think first party data integration, we've been banging this drum all year,
massive.
but like we really need to, if we're not already doing it, like be pushing that and working out ways that we can push that into our sort of paid social activity.
Yeah, and I think then I think for me, I just want to sort of fly through this slide in the sense that sort of it's so important. I know we've talked about AI literally in every masterclass in 2025, right? So, I'm glad we're finishing on it. But I think for me, it's so important that we don't lose that sort of human element in all of this. Like, it isn't a replacement for like business minds, sensible decision making, actually thinking creatively. Like, it is a tool. And I think we talk about all the time that sort of you can use AI to help support and scale, and it will help speed things up. But you know what? If you send it off in the wrong direction, it's going to scale and speed up in the wrong direction. Like, and you're ultimately going to be sort of have to have an understanding, because presumably you've got to analyze, declare results to people within your business that are going to require you to be able to really understand those results. So I think it's so important that we don't just use this as a substitute, it's actually as a support mechanism. And I think that's so important as we move sort of into 2026. I think sort of the 5 key takeaways from the session for me would probably sort of be around making sure that we diversify the channels that we're using, that we make sure that we have a consideration for short form content and how that actually sits across the piece. Thinking about that UGC and EGC discussion that we had, the relevance to build user trust has never been more important, particularly in an AI world that we're living in, where there is a suspicion about, is that accurate? Is that produced by a human? Like, is what I'm getting fed accurate and trustworthy? I think that's so important. I guess AI today, it's about making sure that we're setting up strong signals, getting our campaigns in a position that's going to future-proof them. And a lot of that's hygiene and signal quality, campaign structures, but it's just making sure that we're set up and ready for whatever AI is going to do in the next sort of 12 months or so. And that, I guess, leads us into AI tomorrow.
Yeah.
It really is about thinking about what I've just said there, really around AI is going to support us to do things quicker, more effectively, more efficiently. It's going to take away some of the heavy lifting, if you like. But again, it's so important that we understand the decisions that we're making and feed the platforms the right information to make those decisions.
It's going to be more important than ever to make sure you always keep up to date as well with the developments in AI and don't get left behind when, things get released and things update.
Yeah, because I think that would be the one for me. I think this year it still surprised me how many people are using like old campaign types, for example, within their campaign setup. And I think for me that there's clearly a nervousness about doing it or a lack of knowledge about how to implement. So I think it's so important that people do sort of embrace it, because again, this isn't going away. Something that all of the platforms are leaning into. I think we always like to finish, or penultimately, I'd like to just say we have put this out there, which is a checklist for effective paid media in 2026. I won't go into each of these, but I think also this is something, yes, we can share on screen right now. I can share via sort of the video or the podcast, however we're engaging with this after. We'll also send this out to everybody who signed up for the session today, just as a bit of a checklist that you can then refer back to, consider over the Christmas period, and definitely think about in the lead up to 2026. And then finally, really, I just wanted to say sort of, again, remember, there is an exclusive offer for anybody who's joined the session today, or also anybody that's listening on catch up, to say that sort of we are offering a free 30-minute consultation with our social team to talk anything that you've got around sort of that paid social element, how it's going to play out for your organisation, and really make that contextual to your specific organisation and sector. So again, please feel free. It's no obligation to sign up in the chat and listen to and engage with that so that you can speak to one of our experts on that matter. And finally, final point is, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to Max and James for joining us on today's session. Thanks for everybody that's listened throughout 2025. Listen to my dulcet tones every couple of weeks. Hopefully hasn't been too boring or monotonous. So yeah, it's been fantastic to see the level of engagement that we've had across the masterclasses. We really do hope you have a fantastic Christmas period. And for anything that you want to reach out for, then please do feel free to reach out. But thank you very much for your involvement today, and all the best for the new year.